Good morning, St. Kitts and Nevis, and welcome to another edition of Inside the News. As per usual, I am German Abel, sitting in on a Saturday. Yes, it's a very bright Saturday on the outside. It's a very bright day on the outside, yes. I trust you're having a really good Saturday morning here. It's that time when we go beyond the headlines here on Inside the News to discuss issues impacting us here in St. Kitts and Nevis, regionally and across the world. This morning, we will dive a bit more into some of the issues, especially those topics that were discussed this week, especially by the Prime Minister and leader of the opposition, Premier Mark Brantley. But before we even do any of that, we have to acknowledge our partners who make the program possible.
Worry-free Christmas, yes I will. I'm gonna have a worry-free Christmas, yes I will.
What's got you so happy?
I'm heading to TDC Financial Services for their worry-free Christmas promotion. They're offering up to $100,000 secured and $85,000 unsecured. It's everything I need to tick off my holiday to-do list. Renovating the house, getting gifts for the family, travel plans, and even back to school shopping. With TDC Financial Services, I'm getting ready for a worry-free Christmas. No stress, just joy. What about you? You joining me? TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go round.
And welcome back. Welcome back to Inside the News. As I said before, we took the break. I'm German Abel. It's good to be back in your company after being away from the studios for a little bit. Yes, we were on the road. We took the program on the road, Sharon. Yes. It's good to be back with you after a little hiatus from being in the studios. But this morning, we will be discussing critical issues impacting St. Kitts and Nevis. And we have with us leader of the People's Action Movement, Mrs. Natasha Gray Brooks. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Abel, and good morning to the listening audience and those who are viewing via the social media platforms. It is a pleasure to be here at Win FM, and I trust and hope that the discourse this morning will take the citizens and residents a bit further in terms of where they ought to be, where they should be, and how they can get there.
Yes, that's what we try to do here. At least when I'm in the hot seat, we try to go beyond the headlines, normal talk every day on the street, to get people to understand how issues in the federation or decisions that are made impact them, have a public discourse on that, and find solutions to these problems.
Yes, indeed.
Right. So here, I'll let you, share some of your party's views of what's happening before we jump into the discussion.
Okay. Well, from where I sit as the leader of the People's Action Movement, I've had the opportunity not just to assess things from a constituency level. As you know, on the last election, I ran as a candidate for East Bastille. Now, as a leader, I have to look at things a little bit more nationally. So I assess things from a national standpoint, all through the constituencies, and listen to the cries of the ordinary man and woman on the streets. And a number of the concerns that I have been hearing, not just in my constituency, is the cost of living, the crime situation has been a hot topic during the course of the year. I know that there has been some efforts to try and see how best the crime situation can be curtailed. A number of further issues are unemployment. You find that many persons are still seeking jobs, although we are out of the COVID era. There are persons who are still unemployed or underemployed. A number of health concerns and the general upkeep of our infrastructure. I know that there are some roadworks going on, but however, as I go through my constituency, I go through other areas in the country, you recognize that some persons are not feeling that their areas are being properly maintained. There is the water issue. And recently we had an increase in the bus fare, and also the businesses, they are now going to be feeling a little squeeze because Skelec has reintroduced the surcharge, and National Bank has put a number of fees in place. So these are some of the concerns that you hear from day to day. And although it's always good to lend a listening ear, right now what people want is solutions. I know it's all, persons don't mind sharing their stories. Some of us have a lot of pride and we try to keep things to ourselves. But I think right now what people are looking for is an escape route.
Okay, so you outlined a number of critical issues that are impacting people across St. Kitts and Nevis, because one federation
Yes,
and federal policies impact us, whether you live on Nevis or you live on St. Kitts. Let's jump into it. This past week, we heard the big discussion, especially on Monday, we heard, and we're talking about the Citizenship by Investment program here, right, which is the key pillar of the St. Kitts and Nevis economy. Whether or not we like it, if we want to jump high, jump low, it's the key pillar of St. Kitts and Nevis' economy. What is the People's Action Movement's views on this particular back and forth between one party, and then we're hearing the government saying something, and then we're hearing the opposition leader, who, not in that capacity, but as the premier of Nevis, jump in to say that, to defend his government's decision to bring Mr. Martinez to St. Kitts, and then we're hearing that the Prime Minister has a different view, and then Mr. Martinez. What's the People's Action Movement's views on this particular CBI, I would say, debacle that we're facing here in St. Kitts and Nevis?
Well, right now, many persons are seeking answers in relation to what is going on. You're hearing so many different views, and what I think the ordinary man and woman wants is the truth. The CBI has, generated a lot of revenue for the Federation over the years, and we've recognized that there have been some changes to the program, which has impacted a key campaign promise that many persons were looking for when it goes to the dividends, because that was something that the Labour Party campaigned on. We are going to pay two dividends every year, and you recognize, based on the information put forward by the Prime Minister, that as a result of changes made to the program, the dividends were not paid as promised. I know that many of us have heard or viewed the podcast by Mr. Martinez. You have seen agreements circulating in social media, and we are aware that there are a number of court matters pending. I think one is supposed to start or progress in the early part of 2025.
March.
What we want to know as the People's Action Movement is anyone coming from the unit. I know that the matter is before the court, and I understand some of the restraints as a lawyer when matters are before the court, but the information that can come from the program is the people's business. It has affected how we operate as a people. According to the Prime Minister, it has affected how they can do things, because many of our programs were paid for by the Citizenship by Investment program. Now, the People's Action Movement is against any form of corruption, regardless of who the players are. We do not condone corruption. We do not condone any undermining of the government in terms of the manner in which the government is supposed to operate as a result of any actions, whether it is from key persons within the government, ministers, whether it is investors. We do not want to see a product that we fought so hard to build a top name in since 1984. We don't want to see it shattered all because of anyone's selfish greed or desire. And so I've listened. I haven't heard all the explanations, but I've listened to what was available to me. I have seen an agreement that was signed on behalf of the government. I think it was in 2023. I have it somewhere on my phone. And we don't think that all the information is presently before the ordinary man and women. And because of that, we have so many doubts in terms of what next for St. Kitts and Nevis? How can this impact us? And I think there ought to be some sensitization in relation to this matter as far as it can go, because we understand the different constraints when it comes to the legal process. But the Citizenship by Investment Unit is in operation. It has restructured. They have new staff members. They have someone who's now heading it fresh, who's trying to revamp and revive what has basically, I wouldn't say collapsed, but it has moved from one extreme to the next. And you don't know. We are left without so many answers. We don't know what caused these things because everybody's playing the blame game. Mr. Martinez is blaming somebody else. The Prime Minister is blaming somebody else. We've heard about him being a fraudster, but then you're seeing an agreement signed by this administration with the same gentleman who is being classified as a fraudster. I think that there ought to be a forum whereby information can be put to the general public, questions can be asked, so that we are in a better position, not just to find out really who is at fault, but what is the future? What does the future hold for our country? Where do we stand in the ranking?
But would you say that? And this is not. I'm not. We're not just blaming this administration, but the previous administration and the one prior to this one, in terms of sharing information with the public when it comes specifically to the program. Because time and time again, we in the media circle, journalists have been questioning consecutive administrations about information coming out of the CBI unit, the SIDF when it was the SIDF. Even now, we still cannot. We're still not getting the full details in terms of how many passports were issued, how much it was made, within a time frame. Do you think that we need to legislate, or there needs to be some tabling of the information within Parliament so that the public themselves can be better informed of all of this? Or if Mr. Abel becomes a citizen tomorrow, that information has to be gazetted and be made public?
I think that can help, Mr. Abel. And there has to be some checks and balances in terms of being able to hold the relevant parties accountable. And as you indicated, questions have been asked time and time again. Is there transparency? Who's being held accountable for some of the downfalls, some of the fact that information is being withheld? And I think the time is ripe. And, I know persons are going to say, okay, when you're in opposition, you say this and you say that. But the reality is the buck stops right now with the Prime Minister. He is the head. In fact, it is under his ministry. It is under his watch. And I think I heard him say that sometimes he's going to have to make the tough decisions. And the hard decisions, right now, the people require him to make that tough decision, make that hard decision. You are hearing calls from over the waters. So it's not just the persons who are residing here in St. Kitts. I mean, whether it is true or not, I heard the on the podcast, Mr. Martinez, he's saying each citizen should have been able to get 15,000 US. I don't know if that is true. Where did he get these figures from? How was he able to retrieve that information when you, as a journalist, you have been asking for years? Is it that you have to be in a position as Mr. Martinez to be able to get that information? Because he's now revealing information to us that we have been asking for. And again, with the provisor, I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's accurate. But it's just kind of heart-wrenching that when we ask the persons in authority these questions, there is round and round, chim chim bam, and here we have in the dead of dark on a podcast, you find that no, we are hearing these things, and if it is, he's correct, and he's saying that the dividends each citizen should have been able to get not $1,000 EC, but 15,000 US. I think there really ought to be some explanation to the people to show what has drastically changed. I understand when you're in opposition, you say certain things, hoping that when you get in, it is really accurate. If it is, the Prime Minister, during his campaign for 2022, said to the people, you're going to get 2 dividends. The dividends started to be paid. I think there was an independence reset and so forth. But you saw the figures, you saw the numbers, and we don't get a straight answer. You hear things, things have changed. We had to stop this thing from happening to be able not to be blacklisted or graylisted. The ordinary man or woman doesn't really want to hear anything about blacklist and graylist. They know that when you were saying 2 dividends, they went into that the voting box, the polling booth, and they remembered 2 dividends, and they put the X by your candidate based on your campaign promise. The onus is on you to come back. Come back to the people. Lay the cards on the table. Don't dodge the questions. Don't say soon come. Try to be as honest and forthright as you can with the people, because these are the same people that you're going to want in a few years' time, that you're going to want to rely on should they buy what you're saying. If it is, yes, sometimes, okay, you say things and things change, but the problem is there is lack of communication and there is a disconnect between this present administration and the people. And I think this CBI issue, it can have consequences for our nations, regardless of who is in control in the next couple of years. And I think a little transparency and accountability ought to come to the fore right now.
You mentioned something there, and I want you to go a little bit deeper into this, because time and time again, I've come on this program, I've had people come on, and we've been hearing economists and people weighing in, including the IMF, the implications for St. Kitts and Nevis. If, let's say, there's some issue arising out of this CBI program, what are the implications? Because I want to go behind the headlines for this one specifically. What are the implications that you foresee that could be impacting us here in St. Kitts and Nevis? Should we have challenges going forward with the CBI program?
For me, I think one of the most critical things that can impact our nation is the banking system. Because, from what we've heard and so forth, our indigenous bank has been brought into the mix. And for some people, this is where they use it as a channel to get certain transactions done. And if it is our indigenous bank is compromised, you find that it not only affects their operations, their employees, but the persons who do business with them on a day-to-day basis. That would have a trickle-down effect on on everything. It can be catastrophic. And I know I've heard persons, whether they support the Labour Party or not, say that they would not support a foreigner in terms of bringing down our nation, because I think this case has the effect of crippling our nation. And I don't know about you, Mr. Abel. I don't know what this gentleman is saying, if it's true or not, but it sounded to me like a scary movie. You know, when I like thrillers, I like to watch them, but they sometimes make me feel a bit on edge. And that is how I felt. And I'm not a Labour supporter, but I'm a Kititian. I'm a Kititian first and foremost. I am a citizen of this nation. And persons who have information are withholding this information that can cause heartbreak, that can cause job loss, that can cause our economy to go further in debt. I mean, people are in a chokehold right now. And yes, there are some persons who may not be feeling the squeeze. But when you have your little 2 coppers save in a bank, and that bank becomes the center of an investigation which can wreak havoc on our nation, it's going to cause stress for our people. They are going to be wondering and considering, like, should I move this? Should I move that? And, you know, I used to do CBI. I don't do it anymore. But one of the things that persons have to recognize, there are pros and cons to anything. And if it is, people genuinely don't understand what is happening, we owe it to them. We owe it to them to explain and sensitize, because maybe what the gentleman is saying is rubbish, but maybe it is not. And to be left in limbo and to await the outcome of a court case is not sufficient, because...
And more specifically, a RICO court case, which is a very serious matter when it comes to, at least in the United States, and has trickle-down effects.
And I mean, there's so many, there are other persons that may have been named in this matter and so forth. And like you, I mean, maybe you take it a little bit further because you really want to get some answers as a journalist and to be able to sensitize the public. But I think, you know, it's been going on for some months. I don't think we're where we should be in terms of information. Information is critical because it's getting out of hand.
I think this is the problem with this case. I don't think the public has gotten to the bottom of the issue to comprehensively understand it. So I'm guessing we have to wait until some aspect of the court case has come out or the information has been reported in court, that we in the media can bring it to the public. I want to circle back to this whole economic implications, because I don't think the public, again, comprehensively understand, because one section of society will say, Mrs. Gray Brooks is bashing the Labour Party, and then another may say, hey, she's on point in terms of what the potential fallout of this could be. So, one, the indigenous bank that you're referring to is actually the largest, if one of the largest in the OECS.
Yes.
It controls about 50% of the banking business, thereabout, roughly, that's my figure, of banking operations in St. Kitts and Nevis. So any little shift here and there could impact the banking sector in St. Kitts and Nevis, as you alluded to. The social programs, many of which are being paid from the CBI program.
And if, according to the Prime Minister, the civil servants, some of them are being paid from the social, from the CBI. So, I don't know, we are in trouble.
Exactly. And then a lot of those are just the social programs where people are receiving monies. Then a lot of the subsidies and all these other stuff are actually coming through the CBI program. And roughly the social programs were costing us about $250 million thereabout, figures being quoted around in terms of how much is being paid out of the program itself. So there is broad implications for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And IMF has long said, or would have long recommended, that St. Kitts and Nevis use its, and again, when I asked them earlier this year at the spring meetings what their recommendations would be, they again reiterated that we should invest that money and use the returns on the investment to funnel and create opportunities and develop St. Kitts and Nevis. But one of the things that they keep recommending, and I want your view on it, and what would be the People's Action Movement's position on the social programs, because it's costing us roughly $250 million, and this is EC dollars annually. What would be your view and your recommendations for the government, and even if the People's Action Movement, let's say, win the next election, how would you lower that particular cost on St. Kitts and Nevis, on the economy?
No, the People's Action Movement has always been about empowering people. As of late, we recognize that our country, there has been a dependency type syndrome. And again, people are going to say what they say, but this is something that came out of the bowels of labor. There's nothing wrong in terms of bringing relief to our citizens where it is needed. However, once you empower individuals to be able to become self-sufficient, there will be less dependency on some of these social programs. And so where you find a single mother or a single father, they may be depending on the uniforms, they may be depending on the PAP and other programs such as the Aspire, because of the fact that their income is not a livable one. Once you put things in place, one, to empower persons to become entrepreneurs, to become persons to be able to invest in certain aspects of the country so that they can reap the benefits in the long run and that the children can also benefit as a result, there will be less dependency on these social programs. And with less dependency, it actually lowers that figure because the government no longer has, let's say, 5,000 persons to provide on the PAP. They now have 1,000. And so with that reduction in number, clearly the amount that you have to spend to be able to sustain these programs will drastically reduce, which would put us in a better position to maintain roads, be able to make sure that we have the necessary equipment as it relates to electricity and water, make sure that the schools are properly maintained so that there are less issues when it relates to mold, and you will have a better operation in terms of the civil service because persons will no longer be home saying that they are feeling sick because of whatever issues they are experiencing with mold, and that would increase productivity. So I think once persons understand, it's not that we want to keep you on this program forever and ever, amen. We want to give you a hand up. We want to be able to move you from point A to point B so that you can now improve your standard of living. It is about improving the standard of living for our ordinary men and women. And once that is done, persons would not be so dependent. Persons would not be running here and there and saying, government, please for this, government, please for that. And I think the Labour administration has created a monster. And by doing that, they now have to be forking out $250 million on these programs.
But all fairness to the Labour administration, well, previous administrations would have instituted these programs for a number of reasons. But a lot of the initiatives continued under the Unity Coalition, right? And then some of it continued under, continuing rather under this administration. How do you change the mindset of the people? Because let's be frank, it's difficult for you to change or tell someone who is very much dependent on these programs that I'm going to wean you off the programs unless some major institution internationally, the IMF, World Bank, ECLAC, or somebody recommend that, you cut these programs, right? And the IMF has long said or long recommended that you begin to wean people off of these programs.
How do you get them to feel comfortable? Again, it's all about communication. And sad to say, some politicians they don't go back to the people, and so people are of a mindset. Well, okay, I am entitled to this. I'm entitled to that. You said this. You said that. But if you're not educating the people, you're not communicating to them. How would they feel the urge to even want to accept what you say? And it starts there. It may not be the end all to the situation, but it starts there. And for me, I always believe that the more you talk to people, the more you understand what is happening, the more you understand what they are feeling. And anyone who forms part of the People's Action Movement team leading into the next election would have to ensure that communication and constant dialogue is something that they keep at the forefront. And I think it is because the People's Action Movement, from my understanding from the philosophies of the party, is that you always put people first. Sometimes you may want to do something which may not be people-centered, but if it is in the forefront of your mind, you may have a urge to shift. And so, yes, some persons may not understand, because some persons genuinely really don't want to do things for themselves, and I must say that. But there are I have listened to some persons, trying to get on the PAP. I'm calling this person, they are not answering. They told me to pull out a form, and then I see on the website the program is no longer taking applicants. But how often is that communicated so that persons can understand, so that they don't have this expectation, a legitimate expectation that, I will have an additional $500 or $600, whatever it is now, to be able to supply the needs. Because let's face it, there has been an increase in minimum wage. It's now, I think it's $10.75 per hour, which equates to about $430 per week. But with the inflation and the way in which things are presently in our economy, has that increase in minimum wage helped persons to feel, or have they now started to be able to feel a better sense of earning power? Is their disposable income, are they feeling it when they go to the supermarket? Are they feeling it when they have to pay their mortgage, when they have to pay their electricity? So because of the fact that persons have had this increase in minimum wage, they basically feel like it's no different. They now still feel that they have to rely on the government, but no one is talking to them. No one is talking to them. Yes, you may have the prime minister or a minister on a program, but is that enough for the mother who works up at the factory? Is that enough for the father who has to sell a cooler of drinks to be able to provide maintenance for his children? When he's not going to be going to the press conferences like you, Mr. Abel. And I'm not trying to blame the journalists or the media houses. I know you do your part to bring as much information as you could, but is it trickling down? And I think not.
Well, I guess it comes back to the discussion that you did indicate, the lack of pertinent information and getting that information over to people so that they can totally understand what is happening. I have to take a break now, and then we'll come back and continue with more Inside the News here on Win FM.
People make the world go. TDC Financial Services. We're here for you to help you make your dreams come true. Whether your needs are big or small, we'll support you with them all. TDC Financial Services. We are strong. TDC Financial Services. This is where you belong.
TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go.
And we are back here on Inside the News. I am German Abel, sitting in as per usual on Saturday. We have with us the leader of the People's Action Movement, Mr. Shani Gray Brooks, and we are discussing issues impacting us here in St. Kitts and Nevis, those across the region and internationally as well. As you know, when I'm in the hot seat, we go beyond the headlines so you can understand what issues and how these issues will impact you going forward. We try to go beyond the headlines of what we're discussing. And this morning, we've been talking, at least for the first part of the program, about the Citizenship by Investment program and the possible implications for you here in St. Kitts and Nevis. You talked about, Mrs. Gray Brooks, you talked about the potential and whether or not people are feeling the impact of the increases that they've gotten. But before we circle back to that, I want to get from you quickly. There's been talk about the diversifying away from the Citizenship by Investment program. And I can remember, and we know Pam was part of the Coalition Unity Administration. There were, back in, I suspect it was 2015, 2016, and I really want you to respond to this in terms of how politics influence perception in the minds of people. So back in 2015, 2016, the question was asked of then Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris about moving away from the Citizenship by Investment program. And he intimated to the media at the time that and this is just me paraphrasing, I don't have the correct quote here, but he's saying that there was a need for us to move away from the Citizenship by Investment as being the key pillar of the economy. He got pushed back for it. I think he said, at the time, I do hope that there wouldn't be a dependency on it or something like that. But he got criticized for that in the public. But now we're hearing the same discussion that's being had right now. How does the political perception influence how people think in terms of decision making? I want you to answer that quickly for me.
I think politicians greatly impact how citizens make certain decisions. And so the onus is on us to make sure that when we speak to the public, we give them the true and accurate reflection of how things are. Because if you play with the truth or fiddle it a bit, persons are going to hold you accountable to it. Now, I know you premised this question based on the dependence on the CBI. I think as a nation, we shouldn't be too dependent on any single industry, because we see what happened to the tourism industry during COVID. And so we see now when there are challenges and when there are attacks on the program, what can happen to us. So there has to be programs in place where we diversify our economy. We look at other things. We look at technology. We look at agriculture. Again, that was a concern during COVID because food security is something that is very important for our people. And so we have to have persons who are skilled in different areas sit down and put their heads together to be able to look at maybe 5 to 7 areas where our country can now start to look into, delving into, so that in the event that there is a crash of any one sector, we have a fallback position. And that has to be our way in which we operate. Our country can't be so dependent on one particular industry that there's no fallback position.
As you said that, the IMF in their country report for St. Kitts and Nevis published earlier this year, they basically called for restructuring of the tax in St. Kitts and Nevis. In their press conference on Thursday, I asked specifically to address the issue of taxation. And the general consensus, and this is going to be in the headline news and the evening news tonight, is St. Kitts and Nevis needs to take a look at its tax structure. Do you support the reimposition of some level of taxation to boost the revenues of St. Kitts and Nevis for us to shift away from the dependency on the citizenship by investment as a pillar? And within that, maybe direct income tax 2%, 3%, you increase the wages of public servants and so forth to boost, so we wouldn't be frickling and shaking and shivering in our boots about the citizenship by investment program.
You see, if you're going to reintroduce some level of income tax, it has to be at a tiered system, and it has to be in a particular category of income earners, because our low income earners, they already feel that they're struggling. They feel that there is no hope of even coming into the middle section. And one of the things that I would have liked, and I mean, it's probably too late, but I will have a discussion with our lone parliamentarian. One of the things that I would have liked is that the People's Action Movement would have been invited to the budget consultation so that we can give our input on certain things, we can be privy to certain information, so that it's not just thrown at us when we have the budget debate. Because even though we are not in government, we do have solutions. They may not be all. We may not put forward all the solutions that maybe the government might like or appreciate. But we can think sensibly. We can think logically, and sometimes you require somebody who's actually not boxed into that circle to be able to show you things objectively. And I think going forward, that is one of the things that any administration needs to look at. Send an invitation to the political parties. I know from hearing, the invitations were sent to other members of civil society. But from that, we can now have a better sense as to whether there can be increase in taxes, introduction of new taxes, because, again, back to taxes. That is one of the things that the Labour administration indicated, that within the first 100 days, there would be a reduction in VAT. Can they afford to do that? And having gone into office and they recognize we cannot do that, why don't we know? Why are the people still yearning for a reduction in the value-added tax? Now, I know there are VAT-reduced days and so forth, but how impactful is that when it's only a one-off? So when I go to the supermarket tomorrow and I purchase some cleaning supplies, would I have extra income to be able to pay my bus fee tomorrow? These are some of the things. So it's all good. It's all well and good to be able to say, okay, we're having a VAT reduced day on this particular day. But what happens to the rest 360 days in the year? You know, a person still have to live. They still have to put food in the mouths of their children. But I hear you, because the country can only survive if there is revenue, but it must be something that is looked at analytically, and that persons have a clear understanding of how any increase or introduction of a new tax, how it's going to affect all the different classes, if you may, in society. Because somebody who's earning, let's say a big CEO who's earning $25,000 might be able to afford an introduction of a new tax. But someone who's getting $430, okay, let's say it's only one child they have, $430, they have to run to court every month to try and maybe get maintenance from the father. Can they really afford a new tax? And although the bus fare, we had a budget in 2023, no new taxes, $1, that is a tax. That is an extra dollar coming out one way, so that's $2 a day. That's an extra tax on all commuters. But that was introduced just before the December budget, so it's not going to look like a new tax.
Well, we had the Mr. Webster on a couple of weeks back, where I interviewed him, and he had a discussion surrounding why they got the increase and what they were pushing for, but they settled on $1. But the IMF's Director of Communication, Julie Kozak, when I asked her about to address this tax increase and so forth, she emphasized the need for a comprehensive tax reform to overhaul the existing system, aiming to make it more growth-friendly and equitable. She noted that the current tax structure heavily relies on CBI revenues, which presents vulnerabilities in changing global economic conditions. Quote, "Our staff have recommended a comprehensive tax reform to make the tax system for St. Kitts and Nevis more growth-friendly and equitable, and also to reduce dependency on the citizenship by investment revenue," end quote. Highlighting the importance of diversifying the economy. Kozak pointed out that St. Kitts and Nevis would greatly benefit from implementing a more progressive tax system. This reform aims to eliminate the inefficiencies and distortions caused by specific tax concessions, potentially leading to more significant equity and efficiency within the tax framework. So, you're saying that even though I'm just paraphrasing here, because I don't think you say yes or no, but the People's Action Movement would support some form of tax increase, but it must be able to benefit all. So you cannot tax the ordinary man who's working for minimum wage the same way that you're taxing the person who's making $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month.
Any increase in taxes or introduction of taxes, it has to be on a proper assessment of our income earners. The government has this information at its disposal from Social Security in terms of the amount of persons who are in a particular bracket. You look at that. You look at what your revenue has been for a particular period, maybe over the past 10 years, over the past 5 years, and see if this is possible. If it is possible, who we can attack, so to speak. Who can be the persons who would have to now feel an added squeeze? Because right now, certain persons can't take anymore. In fact, a lot of persons are operating in the negative on a monthly basis. So for them to learn, let's say December, that from effective January 1st or 31st, you're going to have to find an extra $5 somewhere. How do you tell a minimum wage earner that you just gave this increase in January, the $70 increase, and meanwhile, that $70 has to compete with the increase in prices in the supermarkets, because sometimes you go back, the goods go up by $4. Yes, some of these are influenced by external factors, but we have a consumer affairs department. We have persons in terms of these different social programs who can try. You said we might have to wean off some persons, but weaning off also can be on a tiered program, so that Natasha knows that she's only going to be on this program for, let's say, 6 months, 9 months, because Abel has to go on 9 months from now, so that there is a level of benefit that it moves across the nation, so that persons don't feel Natasha is the only person that is benefiting. She's been on this program for 8 years. Should someone really be on a program for 8 years? We have to find ways to be able to make sure that these persons can now lift up themselves in society in one way, shape, or form. And that is why education is important and communication is important. But again, some of these programs were only for the benefit of politics. And I say that because before you had the PEP, there was STEP, there was YES, there was this, there was that. And some of it, whilst in opposition, you would hear somebody saying, we're going to move this program. But then instead of moving the program, the name changed.
But I want to ask you, because it's transition to my next question, which would be, do you think the 8% that was received, which is technically 5%, because 3% going towards the pension so
program,
did that go far enough for public servants? Or do you think that it warrants a further increase? Because I know this whole talk about double salary at the end of the year, and for me, it is only one issue that is being addressed, which is you're going to get a bonus for Christmas, and then for the remainder of the new year, or for the new year, you do not. A lot of people do not have any leftovers from that Christmas bonus because it's Christmas, it's Carnival. People tend to, as quote unquote, as I say colloquially, blasé.
I'm going to look at it two ways. Firstly, here you have someone working in the civil service for 10 years. Let's say they're getting a salary of $2,000. Maybe they're on the bottom of the scale. And they feel, because no matter how people classify some civil servants, they are hard-working civil servants. Now, that person feels that their work has gone unnoticed. They don't feel that they are valued. They've been asking to go up on a scale. Okay, they don't go up on the scale, but it's time now for a salary increase. And you give that person an 8% increase in January. So whereas they were working for $2,000, they're now working for $2,160. If I'm correct, I'm not the best at maths, but I try.
Let's work with that.
Yes. So I'm working and I get an 8%. So I get an additional $160 in my pocket. Less statutory deductions, of course. But here comes my Prime Minister. He just got in 2022. And he has gotten a whopping 33% increase. How should I feel as a civil servant, knowing that I've been working, regardless of who's in charge, regardless of which administration, working hard, and you're telling me that with the cost of living just skyrocketing, all the different things that I have to deal with. I have to deal with my mortgage, my children, my electricity bill, my bus fare. And I have been working very hard to make sure that I keep the government system afloat. And you give me $160, but you take in excess of $4,000, $5,000, and you have just less than 2 months. You have just been in office. Have you earned your keep? Are you saying that I haven't earned mine? Okay, so that's one angle. Now, the increase and the notion that the 8% is considered a double salary. Now, if that is what was intended, when it was announced that civil servants were going to get an increase come January or whenever it came into effect, Let them know that. You see, it goes back again to communication, you know. I I don't know if I was the best communicator when I was in school, but I learned something. That communication is key. Because if you told your civil service that this 8% increase is in fact your double salary in perpetuity, well, I'm going to put aside my $160 in a fixed deposit under my bed, in one of the stones in Black Rock, wherever I put it, or I'm going to give my trusted neighbor to hold it for me. So when come December, I have my $160 times 12, and I can buy a little gift for my daughter. I can now buy a 5 pound ham instead of a 3 pound. I can maybe just change one of the curtains, maybe not all three. Mind you, I'm not going into the troops. I'm not going to put on any wigs. This is just me trying to appreciate the hard work that I've done throughout the year. And so had the Prime Minister or someone tell me that the $160 that I am now getting is really my double salary. So we could have all this fancy talk about more spending power, being able to go into the bank. Yes, that is what the increase is really. It puts you in a better position to have disposable income. But then that disposable income also has to compete with all the other things that have happened throughout the year. What about an emergency health situation that a parent has? That $160 has to help. So now you're going to and you know, I think this is insulting the intelligence of our people when you tell people that this is the same thing as a double salary. I don't care how many times you calculate it on your calculator, because if I'm working for $2,000, double of that is $4,000. I am looking to, and even though we are not entitled, civil servants are not entitled to a double salary, it has become a legitimate expectation over the years. Yes, some may argue that it should be done on an appraisal system based on the type of work that is demonstrated by our employees. But that has to be something that is filtered in, communicated by the different persons in human resources, so persons know that they have to earn their keeps. So from January to November, however the time is monitored, whether they're going to be faking it or what, they know that they have to show that they are productive civil servants. But we have developed a culture whereby double salary is paid. Some people pay it when elections are coming and some people don't. But just like last year, persons were looking for it. They got half. They did not get the whole. But when you look at what has happened, here is my Prime Minister, my Minister of Education, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Attorney General. On their salary, they have gotten, some of them, extra $3,000. And I've only gotten $160. We have to go into the same supermarket. I may have to pay for all of my food, while some of theirs is as a result of allowances.
But while I hear that argument, right?
Yes.
The Attorney General and the others have suggested, because I don't remember the full quote, that this increase that they receive, which is again a lot, double digits compared to what public servants are receiving, is an accumulation in terms of percentage. And I know people are going to criticize me for saying this, but based on what is being suggested, that over the years since way back when,
Yes,
they have not seen an increase. Would you support the idea then, because I know the public has criticized and the People's Action Movement came out to talk about the increase as well. Would you say that your party would have supported a gradual increase in terms of, let's say, if it's going to be a 33% increase or a 30% increase, it should have been spread across a longer period rather than the initial bump or spike in the salaries?
No, I'm gonna say this, and whether I get licks for it, that's fine. In 2024, the present parliamentarians, most of them were new. So, and then they were relying on a report that was in existence from since about 2019 or thereabout. And according to the legislation, that report is good for 3 years. So clearly, the report that they were using was outdated and based on circumstances that existed 3-4 years ago. And so maybe a report that was commissioned in 2023, 2024 would have resulted in a lower increase, a 20%. Or a tiered approach, or to say, well, okay, we're not looking at parliamentarians who have been in there since 1995. These are majority, not all, but majority of these parliamentarians have been there for just a year and 6 months. Okay, we are going to make this increase effective. The dissolution of the House of Parliament. I bet that some of the things that we are waiting for as citizens and residents of this great nation, we would have seen them. We would not have seen breaking of ground more than once, because they know they have to produce, and they have to produce to be able to earn their increase. That, even though it's far-fetched, because I don't think they would have done it, but I'm saying it's either the tiered approach, as you're saying, which is the latter approach for me. But because look after the people first. Look after our hard-working citizens who work day in, day out in the civil service. Look after them, and then you could talk about topping up your pay. How can they be topping up their pay when they haven't even proven anything to the people? Yes, we are hearing a lot of things are coming, but when will they come? And before they come, you have already increased your salary? That is heartless. That is heartless. Because if there was any compassion when that was tabled, when that resolution was tabled in Parliament, someone who was thinking about their constituent, who was thinking about the mother who did not have food to put on their table, who was thinking about the person who was trying to get some money to go overseas. The day before, Thursday morning, a gentleman called me. I don't know him. He said he's from Nevis. He said he got my telephone number from the Premier. And he spoke about the dialysis unit being down for a couple of weeks or so forth. And then he started to talk about another colleague of his who he probably met at the dialysis unit, or he knows him from somewhere, and he's stuck in Colombia on a $10,000 US bill that he cannot be released until it is paid. And so, whilst persons are saying that the increase amounts to a double salary, how many people are really feeling it that way? When an emergency situation arises, who has $10,000 US even to fly someone out if you don't have insurance? And so these are the things that we have to deal with. There are different challenges that face our citizens, that face our civil servants. And when hard-working civil servants have to catch bus and pay an additional $1 or $2 a day, when I have my Prime Minister, and I'm calling my Prime Minister because the Prime Minister saying it's a Nevis, driving out in the state-owned vehicle, doesn't have to pay gas, housing allowance that is secured, entertainment allowance, telephone allowance, and they can use the telephone allowance to call back the constituents who have been calling them over and over and they haven't been returning their calls. These are the things. So even if you get the increase, use the allowances to be able to help our people in some way, shape, or form. Because a lot of things that we hear being called out it's not coming from them. It's not directly impacting their pockets. I'm not saying that politicians should be shinging out money left, right, and center. But sometimes you have to have a heart of compassion. And so I think that I don't know what was the general consensus, who advised them in relation to this 33% increase. But how can one really sleep at night knowing that they have earned thousands of dollars in increase, whilst the messenger down at Ministry of Infrastructure is getting $160 on that salary every month? Take out your deductions, and as I say, some of it is for the pension plan. Then out of the $160, if they are a commuter, they spend just for themselves an extra $10 a week to get to and from work. So that's $160 taking out that $10. For 4 weeks, they're taking out $40 out of the $160. So they really only have $120. Then to go into the supermarket, they have to now face the prices for $3.15 for a Vienna sausage, $4.75 for milk, and then have to watch somebody in their face during the middle of the week, because these are the harsh realities of life, that we have become a society that is now suffering because of where we are at, and we have become in such a short space of time. So I don't know. I'm going to challenge one of those parliamentarians to take the increase and give it to somebody for their Christmas.
Okay, we have to take a break now, and then we'll come back and continue with more Inside the News here on Win FM.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
People make the world. TDC Financial Services. We're here for you to help you make your dreams come true. Whether your needs are big or small, we'll support you with them all. TDC Financial Services. We are strong. TDC Financial Services. This is where you belong.
TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
And we are back here on Inside the News. We have with us this morning the leader of the People's Action Movement, and we apparently everybody wants to engage you this morning. We had a few callers, but you were making your point, so I allowed you to make your point there. But the callers, you can call in and share your thoughts, ask her any questions, ask the leader any questions. But just be mindful, you may not be someone who supports the party or supports her, but support her position. She is the leader, and we have to respect her authority, right? So just be mindful and be respectful in terms of your approach to asking the leader of the People's Action Movement a question. I have to say that because some of us may not agree with some of the positions that the People's Action Movement or the leader would have stated. So, I want to transition to sports. This is one of the areas that we don't necessarily focus on here in St. Kitts and Nevis, especially with our sportsmen and women, with the issue of crime and violence. Do you think we're doing enough to support the young men and women who are within the sporting arena? And do you think enough resources are being thrown behind these young people to get them to the position where sports can be used as an avenue to seriously tackle the issue of crime and violence?
I don't think enough has been done over the years, but there have been some steps. But I think we ought to do more given the situation that we presently face. Proper assessment of the different communities would get you to understand who are the quote-unquote troublemakers. Now, we've had the peace program, we've had the lift, and I'm sure coming out of those programs, you would have understand some of the different nuances and the different skill sets of some of these individuals. Now, once you're in a particular sporting program, you get to blow off some steam. You are under a specific set of rules. So persons get to understand what it is to be disciplined, what is understand to follow directions, and how it is to be a team player. And so that can help to eliminate some of the anger management issues that we have. And I think if we focus on different programs which are geared toward crime prevention and anger management, and do it in a way, start to infiltrate this from the primary school level, because not all children like sports, but if you make it mandatory, so that, I know there's physical education, so that it becomes a way of life, being able to take different directives from someone in authority, so that you understand that if someone does something that you don't like, it's not all about boxing them down, but trying to deal with anger management. Once you do that, you can now start to use your budget to allocate resources for sports in school for that particular angle, so that persons are now doing things that they like, trying to stay away from idle company, whether they want to or not. It now becomes mandatory. It becomes instilled in them, and then others can learn from them, because sometimes people look at you say, I like that guy, he's a good striker, he knows how to play cricket well, and I am inspired by him, and so I am now going to play cricket as well. And if it is, we start doing this from a smaller age, you find that when you reach the age of 17 and 18 and so forth, that so many life skills have been instilled and embedded in these children that they think twice about committing crimes or getting involved. And I think we ought to use that angle to try, because I know there are a number of reasons why people commit crimes, why people get involved in gangs. But if we do our part from the school system coming up, you might be stopping a gang culture from developing 5 years down the line. So we start infiltrating it now and get different mentors in different programs. So I think we ought to maybe invest a little bit more into sports through the school system.
You mentioned invest through the school system. There's long been a talk in the sporting arena and among us sport enthusiasts that enough is not being allocated. Huh?
What's your favorite sport? You say us.
Actually, I'm part of the tennis association.
Oh, okay, great.
Right, I cover sports, so I think. But when we talk about investing, there have been calls or suggestions that we need to do more in terms of from the citizenship by investment program. And this was a recommendation that we should at least put aside 1%, 2%, because I could remember maybe a year, 2 years ago, one association was literally out there with a box cartoon box passing around to collect funds to travel. Do you believe that we should allocate at least a significant percent or a piece of a percent or half a percent of the citizenship by investment program to sports association? So you can, because the Olympic Committee does its part, but in terms of the national assistance that that if Mr. Abel wants to go run, if Mr. Abel needs to go to get train overseas, sponsorship, government support, he can go and draw down from that fund to
I think that would help very much, because it will continue to encourage and motivate persons to really want to be a part of. Because sometimes you'll hear people say, "Oh, I ain't in that nothing in it for me, nothing in it for me. I can't reach anywhere with that." So once persons see that there's this investment to the upbringing in terms of sports enthusiasts, it will encourage persons, and again it will take people away from a life of crime. And although some of the persons that are getting involved in criminal activity, they are in a minority, but if we save one person, that's a lot, because that one person can put so much into our society when they do it from a meaningful way.
And that is so true. So callers, you can call in, share your thoughts, ask the leader of the People's Action Movement any questions that you have, or you want to respond to anything that she would have indicated. So as we talk about all of this, realistically, from the People's Action Movement perspective, and this is more of a direct question, assessing the current administration and the way in which they have been undertaking major projects, government funding. Okay, let me hold that thought. We have a caller. Caller, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning,
Good
political
morning. Good morning.
leader. Politics is an interesting subject and topic, and sometimes it sounds very tranquil, like you could really drink it in and get accustomed to it, but it's a frightening situation sometimes, especially in St. Kitts. My question is to you. What are your thoughts on the citizen by investment in terms of what it was originally meant to do and actually what is doing this present moment? I will tell you why I asked the question. I asked the question because it's my view that it appears as if that we have put great dependency on the generating income of the citizen by investment to support Fat Albert. And Fat Albert is who you call very top-heavy, which is our government that I could see. The type of salaries that we have in terms of running the administration, it appears as if that the citizen by investment is maintained, that is what is maintained, the salary status, salary and wage. And my understanding of the introduction of the citizen by investment was to build the country so that it will fall in general, those who work for government and those who don't work for government will be able to be employed, re-establish, reposition ourselves in a better position, and put our country in a better footing with a channel to go forward rather than just spending it on salary and so on. Because salary, once it's spent, once it's gone to people, it's disbursed capital project a loss. You'll have to go for loans and all of that. So I'd like to hear your view on that. And you could just settle down a little bit and be calm. It's okay, and fire your shots. But at least you're choosing your words carefully, so that is good, because today you say one thing is good, and if you find yourself in the chair, you probably might change your opinion and your views as how to see them. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Yes, so thanks to that caller, dear. Yes.
Okay, caller, I'm grateful for the question. From my understanding of the CBI program, when it initially came into place in 1984, thereabout, It was basically to uplift and advance the nation in terms of the different programs, infrastructure, and trying to ensure that the country would have moved from one state to the next and to be able to ensure that it developed over a period of time. We have seen some of that. However, I think we have become too dependent on it. And as you would have indicated, it is now being used not just for the upliftment and development of the country, but for everyday things. So, and this came from the mouth of our Prime Minister. It is being used for paying salaries. It is used for the schools. It is used for social security. It is used for, so he highlighted a lot of things. And so, whereas we want to do, if we want to do something of significance now, a capital project, we either have to go to the CDB, we have to look at our friends from Taiwan to assist us, because what was the initial intention of the program has now been shifted and the funds are depleting. And again, we are without answers. So I think the original focus, we may need to refocus on what was the initial intention, and to ensure that when we have our infrastructure that needs certain upgrading, we have funds from the CBI. Our wells, we have funds to use. Our roads, our power plant, all these things, so that the general maintenance of the nation, we don't have to go and seek a loan for that, because we would have gained so much revenue. How much, I can't tell you, but we would have gained so much revenue to be able to ensure that the basic needs of our society are taken care of, that we don't have to go and seek help for it.
And that's an interesting point that you make there. My question added to that is, well, before I make that, let me make this point. And that was the point that the IMF was making, and you said in terms of revenues garnered from the program. So the IMF was basically suggesting sometime back, and they keep reiterating this every year: invest the revenues in a rainy day fund. So whatever profits you get back, you can use that to develop your country. But the baseline rate in terms of what was put in remains there. So you still have that money. What would be your assessment of the government's 2 years, 2.5, thereabout 2 years, many months, functioning of the country?
If I'm to be honest, there have been few attempts to do some things for our people. A lot of those things have been met with hurdles, delays, and you're not seeing the results. Let's look at the housing program. This administration promised a housing revolution. 2,400 homes, 600 within each year. I think I heard somewhere on the news this week that 110 homes have been built. I don't think they have been allocated, but to date, only 2 have been allocated. And so, having started this program with the East Coast Housing Development in April, I think, of last year, the government is now a year and something into the program, and they have fallen short of the mark of 600. Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on that because there are other issues, but just to pinpoint a particular situation, there were a number of residents who were living in what you call the corner houses on the West Street and Manchester Avenue. Those houses were broken down in an effort to build maybe apartment complexes, etc. And these persons were relocated to different areas, and the government, through NHC, has been paying the rent. This was only supposed to last 1 year, so that by the end of that year, they would have been relocated, I guess, to their new home based on the housing revolution. And now you have a situation where those persons are being told, the end of December, they were actually told the end of June, but they were given an extension. The end of December this year is the last that that the rent is going to be paid on their behalf. I have a copy of one of the contracts. It's $2,500. That person works for $430 a week, which is about $860. That's $19.20 or thereabout. Their wage is less than what is required of them come January morning. And so, based on a campaign promise, based on what was supposed to be something good to help improve the economy, find employment for persons, find housing solutions for persons, because housing solution is a good thing. You have security. You can take the documents to the bank. You can, pat yourself on the back and say that you own piece of the rock. And here are persons now going into December, not knowing what's going to happen to them in January, because they cannot afford to pay this landlord. Because even though NHC pays the rent, the contract is between the resident and the landlord. Yeah. And so that housing revolution, we're not seeing the results of it as yet. What was promised. In terms of the economy, again, we discussed it earlier on the program, the cost of living is going through the roof. And yes, some of the things that we are facing when we're going in the supermarkets, they can't be controlled, all of it, by the government because of the external forces, but there are things that they can do. Again, we had the hospital. It's all well and good to have a smart hospital. It's all well and good to have certain things that are advanced. But if the problems that we are facing presently in terms of the maintenance, lack of maintenance, the attitude of senior staff, if that is going to be transferred to our smart hospital, then there is something, a bigger problem that needs to be resolved before breaking that ground again in relation to the smart hospital, because it's been twice. And so when you look at certain things, the hospital, I know that there is maybe a halfway mark to go in terms of the term, but there were a number of things that were promised within 100 days. Okay, we understand that has not happened. Again, lack of communication. The water problem. Yes, there was a big presentation and everything over Keon, but right now, if you look at what's happening throughout the communities, it's not just Keon. You hear people every Sunday saying they're home on a weekend, they can't get to cook, they can't get to wash, no water. People at Taylor's, no water. People in New Road, no water. People in West Farm, no water. There is a problem that was campaigned on, and again, you have people who are crying out. Our roads, I saw a post on social media this week where somebody planted grass in the potholes. There was a gentleman who was in court this week in relation to a charge, driving without due care and attention. He said he's going to plead guilty, but it was a pothole that he fell in, and as a result of that, he bounced on somebody else's vehicle and now have to pay for the damages to that vehicle. So, all in all, they were very good at campaigning. Execution and governing is a problem, and I don't think that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis is getting that we are getting what they deserve. We are too much. We are in a state of uncertainty.
Would you say that, quote unquote here, air quotes, the investigation or proposed investigations into the way some of the issues that it's been claimed to have arisen, that some of the discrepancies that the government found, that those investigations are getting in the way of them functioning, or is it a case that the government cannot balance the two?
You're speaking about the investigation in relation to the previous administration?
Previous administration, yeah.
Now, they are the technocrats who can deal with certain things. Now, if it is that they are investigating certain things, Let the persons who are dealing with the investigations deal with the investigation. You have a country to run. And so you can't want to dabble in everything so as to create a problem for everyone. Delegate. Make sure that persons are there doing. I mean, if I'm a prime minister, am I to be the one investigating wrongdoings? There's a department for that. So deal with the ministries that you have allocated to yourself, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of National Security. Likewise, there are other ministers, and so the permanent secretaries. Sometimes, when you have forums and different things outside of the country, they can actually send these people, because some of them are who do the work. Send them and stay here and govern, so that we don't have to. Yes, there are necessary trips. There are necessary trips. I'm not going to pretend that everything can be done from here. But sometimes these trips ought not to be taken by our ministers. They can be taken by the different permanent secretaries and technical experts who can come back. Those are the ones who are actually going to put certain things in place anyhow. So, I think there has to be a balance, and you have to pick your poison.
Yeah, correct. Pick a struggle, as the kids would say these days. I, in terms of the water situation, in all fairness to the government, they did say in the campaign that they're going to address these issues, right? But to an extent, climate change has been the bottom line issue when it comes to water, right? And to an extent, again, the government did promise to address some of these issues. And all fairness, again, they've been making strides in terms of the K-on issue. They did make some strides, and they did make some strides in terms of getting the desalination plant, in progress, getting that up and running. But in terms of actually being able to, as politicians, and some may say, okay, the leader of the People's Action Movement right now, she's talking all these grand things while she's in opposition, but she's not aware of what exactly is in the consolidated funds right now, what's in the government's purse right now. So she can say all of these things, but when she gets it, it's going to be a different tune. How do you and the People's Action Movement balance this with the reality? Because I know you probably would say, when you come in, you have to explain to the people what exactly is happening. This is what we found, so some of these cannot necessarily be instituted. How would the People's Action Movement balance something like this? Let's say you guys come into government within 2028 or so.
No. You see, you always have to have a plan for the people. You can't go into a campaign not letting people know what your plans are for the country. Upon entering into office, you may meet a different situation, as you say. However, there has to be an avenue whereby, as a politician, you not just try to grandstand in relation to a particular issue, but you have to be able to dissect each particular avenue or area so that persons can understand, well, we said 600 homes, but when we signed the contract, this is what happened. There was a particular deal that we had to strike in terms of the workers that were going to come from overseas, and I'm just talking, and so we can't use all local. Come back and say something, because yes, you may very well have had good intentions with your promises, but as time goes along and you recognize a change or shift in circumstances, communication will help you. It might not help you completely, but somebody would say, they were honest, they were forthright, and they were always in constant dialogue with the people. Now, if you were to come in and meet a deficit as opposed to a surplus, and you thought that the consolidated fund had in X amount of dollars, come back and say, this is what we promised during our campaign. However, after properly assessing the situation, we recognize that we are in the red. And so, although we promised this within 100 days, hold strain. We are going to deliver. We are going to deliver for you, but not in 100 days, within 2 years. Because we now have to grow the economy. We now have to be able to put the government on a proper standing to be able to execute for you.
Caller, good morning.
Yes, good morning, man. How you doing, man?
Well,
Good morning. Good morning. I'm good.
Yes, to you and the guest there, right? That's the leader of the PAM party, right?
yes.
Yeah, okay. I want to just congratulate her on taking that leadership role and stepping up.
Thank you.
Anyway, quickly, right? I wanted to be a pointed question, being that you're a lawyer. You're a lawyer too, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. When I listen to the Prime Minister, right, the round table, right, and I'm going to the MSR saga that's going on. He said that the guy Philippe Martinez came into his office and was trying to shake him down for money. My question to you is that could he have arrested Philippe Martinez right on the spot, right there?
Well, I don't think the police. Sorry.
Based on off of what he's saying that the guy was doing, he was trying to extort him for money, pressuring him to pay up. You know what I'm getting?
Yes,
getting at
yes,
as a
yes.
lawyer, right? Could if somebody threatens you? Okay, let's bring this down to a simple threat. If somebody threatens you, right, in this day and age, could that person, based on off of what he said that Martinez was trying to do to him at that specific moment, could the police commissioner could have been called in and arrested Martinez
Of
right
course.
there?
Of course, because
Okay.
he
Okay.
could have given a statement, whether it is embezzlement, whatever it is he was alleging, and based on the investigation from the police, then Mr. Martinez would have been subject to a charge. Yes, you're innocent until proven guilty, but the evidence would have had to play out.
And this is where I'm going with this inaction by our current Prime Minister. He is not taking the necessary actions in terms of legalities. He has his point man, the AG, and the DPP person is a independent body, right? But him having his AG, and he knows what Philippe Martinez did to him when he came into his office, like he said at that round table. Philippe Martinez, in my opinion, should have been arrested right there. He should have. There was grounds for him to arrest him right there. So all of this inaction by the Prime Minister is not really that good. In terms of the money, right, what I've noticed, I'm just trying to make a statement here. What I've noticed, they gave themselves a fat raise, and they promised to do certain things for the people financially, like the dividends and such.
Yes.
And everything concerning money about the people, they are now rolling it back. And now I'm hearing you saying today that the 8%, they're trying to consider that a bonus. I don't agree with that at all. The people got to pay close attention to what's going on in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And me personally, I want to encourage the young persons to step up and be involved in the political affairs of SKN. That's my small contribution right now, but I listen, keep listening.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you very much for coming on this morning and making your presentation.
No problem.
Thanks a lot.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
I want to go a little bit deeper. I want people to understand from a lawyer's perspective. So if I come into the studios of Win FM and I say, "Hey, Mr. Scrape Brooks, we have an outstanding case, and I'm going to take $50,000 to drop the matter. Let us settle the matter for $50,000." Where is the gray line there?
No. Based on what you're saying, and I'm just trying to make sure I'm assessing it properly. Let's say, okay, I don't want to accuse you of anything untoward. Let's say,
No, it's okay.
Let's say you're accused of sexual assault, and you come to me and you say, I'm going to pay you $50,000 if you drop the matter. Is it in that context you're looking at?
No, well, in general, but I understand the
Okay.
sexual nature is a different matter. But
Or
let's
okay, let's
dissect.
say it's assault and battery. You boxed me,
Yeah.
and you bust up my lip and everything, and you say, you know what, I'm gonna give you $50,000. You drop the case. That context.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, under normal circumstances, in a situation like that, you would have certain restrictions in terms of your communication with me. But by you doing that, you're actually perverting the course of justice. Basically, you're trying to stop me from or encourage me to not give evidence so that you won't be prosecuted. That in and of itself is an additional crime. And so by you doing that or sending someone to talk to me and so forth, I mean, there are persons who have been prosecuted for that. And the maximum penalty for those type of offenses is life imprisonment. Clearly, the judge has a discretion in terms of the severity of the matter. But I don't know if you're comparing that to what the Prime Minister said, but if Mr. Martinez, I think I heard the clip where he was saying Mr. Martinez basically was asking him for money and that kind of thing. I don't know when he said that happened. If it was after the case, if it was before the agreement was signed between MSR Media and the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. So timing is something that we really would need to ascertain to be able to see in what context he was speaking. And this week has been a week of revelations because you have been hearing so much. And right now, it's a situation where everybody's just throwing in the kitchen sink and everything to be able to clear themselves. And what we need as a people is the truth. And this thing is really, really going to weigh heavily on the mind of some persons, some more than others, because some people really don't understand what can happen. And I really think that the art, and I'm saying it not to try to affect anybody's case, but there ought to be a forum of education, because the reality is, and I said it, but I don't know when this matter will be resolved, but this has the potential to cripple our nation, and we have to save it, regardless if it's Labour, regardless if it's PAM, regardless if it's PLP, CCM, whoever, because we have to live here. Our children have to live here. Our children's children. And I mean, it's hard to know that 20 years down the line, I don't know if I'm going to be in a rocking chair, and I hope not. 20 years down the line, I am thinking, I could have done something more to be able to help my grandchildren, and I regret that I didn't do it. And had I done enough to be able to pull that information where it ought to come from, we might have been in a better situation. So I'm calling on the Prime Minister. I'm calling on his administration. Find avenues to educate our people, because this is a burning issue. A burning issue. I do have to go back and listen that podcast in its entirety again to pull out certain things, because as I said, when I listened once, it was like a scary movie, like the Grim Reaper is about to come and just attack everybody. And what do I do? How do I help? So I am going to do my part to be able to educate where I can. I don't have all the information because I don't know what all deals were signed, etc. But St. Kitts and Nevis needs answers. Our people needs answers, and I'm going to do my part, whether it is constant calling out, but I think it needs more than calling out. I think I owe it to the nation to get as much information as I can to make things clearer and accurate information, that is.
Yeah, and I just want to say this to the public, that these are allegations that are being thrown around
Yes.
both by the Prime Minister and from Philip Martinez. We don't necessarily have this. This is what the Prime Minister said during the week in response to what happened on Monday with Mr. Martinez's podcast information that came out there. So we're waiting for the full information and all the investigations and so forth to provide the facts. I'll take a quick break now because we're almost to the end of the program, and then we'll continue on the other side of the break with more Inside the News.
Found the sound 98.9 Win FM.
People make the world go
I'm gonna have a worry-free Christmas, yes I will. I'm gonna have a worry-free Christmas, yes I will.
What's got you so happy?
I'm heading to TDC Financial Services for their worry-free Christmas promotion. They're offering up to $100,000 secured and $85,000 unsecured. It's everything I need to tick off my holiday to-do list. Renovating the house, getting gifts for the family, travel plans, and even back to school shopping. With TDC Financial Services, I'm getting ready for a worry-free Christmas. No stress, just joy. What about you? You joining me? TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
People make the world go
And we are back here on Inside the News. We can take one or two more calls before we wrap the program. You can engage with the leader of the People's Action Movement. So, yes, as we begin to wind down, earlier you mentioned a barrage of issues that you and the party would have seen popping up in St. Kitts and Nevis. The cost of living, for example, unemployment, the healthcare, roads, the water issue, increase in bus fare, Skellig. I want to touch on the bus fare issue because one of the things that came out of the interview, and the busmen have been complaining about this for quite some time, is some of the concessions that they were accustomed to, they did not receive, or some of it were put on hold. And also, okay, let's take this caller. Caller, good morning.
Yes, good morning, man. Let me just make one quick point before you get off. When the lady gets there, right, I want to say to her, when she go back and look at this podcast with Philip Martinez, aside from the money part of it, right, with the problem with the CBI, right, going on, I noticed that he was mentioning a lot of concerns about national security. My thing is that when she go back, try to focus on that part of the podcast as well. National security, all the issues that he was talking about with the Chinese, them coming in and stuff like that. I want to know, get some type of input from her, maybe quickly before she get off. But I want to know, how is the Prime Minister, him being the Minister of National Security, how is he going to, deal with these issues that was mentioned in our podcast? Because there's some serious things that this guy has put forward in terms of national security. And that's my contribution for the day, man. You guys have a good weekend.
Thank you. I am hoping that the Prime Minister would have listened the entire podcast, and as the Minister of National Security, he would be able to comfortably, I hope, address all the concerns that Mr. Martinez would have raised in relation to our borders, our security of the nation. So I would leave that within his purview, and I would definitely look at that aspect of it, and then I could at an appropriate forum, whether it is via radio or social media, I would make a comment or so on it so that it can get to you somewhere.
Okay, before I ask the question that I wanted to ask, in terms of this particular issue, the premier recently, I suspect it was at his press conference, he said, or he suggested rather, that stated that we have enough investors or economic citizens that he suggested that we should change our angle or perspective of how we administer the program. More specifically, we should have these economic citizens be the ones to invest in some of the capital projects that we have. Is that something that you believe would be beneficial to St. Kitts and Nevis at this point? For example, we need a smart hospital. One of those investors, we have billionaires and millionaires in the program, should contribute to assisting in building the hospital or the Basti High School or so forth.
You know, I've heard that chain of thought before, and I've been dragging my memory to see if it was during the 2022 campaign that I heard it. I think that is something once we do our continued due diligence and make sure that these economic citizens are still of good character and they're not going to bring our country into disrepute, that is something that we can look at, because they would not just have gotten our citizenship, or as some people would say, they pay money for our passports, but they would have a vested interest in our nation and its upkeep. And so that might be something that the country can benefit from, and we can continue to assess and make sure that we pay keen attention to who we give our citizenship to.
Okay, we have just about 3 minutes left for the program. Before I give you the opportunity to give your final thoughts, I want to get this from you. Right now, the People's Action Movement is being criticized for what people see or perceive as being the party is criticizing the government for whatever it does, whether or not it be the thought of constructing more homes, the road, they're resurfacing the St. Peter's Main Road, they're bringing in investors to do this, they're constructing more hotels. How would you respond to those criticisms that the People's Action Movement is criticizing the government for criticism, just being the opposition and just criticizing the government?
You know, it's kind of ironic that you said that, because sometimes I hear the People's Action Movement is too silent. They're not doing enough. They're not saying enough. We're not hearing them. And if you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And I find it strange that when we hold the government's feet to the fire, try to ensure that there's accountability and transparency, persons would say that we are just criticizing. There has to be a responsible opposition. There has to be persons who are ensuring that the government carries on its function in the manner in which it ought to, because this is a democracy. We have to ensure that our citizens get the best bang for their buck. And I am not going to sit aside and see something and not say something. I might, some persons might say I'm not saying it quick enough, sharp enough, or enough, but I'm damn well going to say it, because this is a time where our country needs us. We can't sit aside in our homes or offices and just expect a government to collapse or expect things to work in our favor. We have to demonstrate that we are for the people and of the people. And one of the ways in which we are going to do that is to help people to know that we are ensuring that the government is accountable to them. And maybe by doing that, they may get their 600 homes. Maybe by doing that, they may get their roads fixed because someone was out there. The People's Action Movement was out there agitating on their behalf. And so under my leadership, I will not stop. I'm not just going to criticize because that is something that can be done, but I'm going to do it constructively. And whenever we can offer solutions, we would offer solutions. And as I'm quite certain that anyone who was here listening can just say, oh, I was here saying this and saying that without offering some solutions.
Okay, I'll give you the final word. You can give your parting comments, Rap.
Well, it was a pleasure, Jermaine, being here. I trust and hope that my next visit would not stay too long.
We'll try not to.
But there are so many issues that are facing our people. And some of them, they have to be dealt with collectively. Some of them, they have to be dealt with aggressively. Some of them requires constant dialogue with our people. And in whatever means we can, the People's Action Movement, we will be there for you in the alleyways, the byways, the bus terminals, the ferry terminals. We are going to be on social media. We are going to be calling out the government. When we have to show up on Church Street, we definitely will. But it has come to a point where enough is enough. We are hearing the cries from our fellow citizens every day. You go on the road, you hear people speaking. I don't know if they're speaking just because they recognize who I am, or it's just what people are feeling. People's reality, they're coming out, they're not hiding. And strangely enough, it's not just persons who support the People's Action Movement. It is persons who support the Labour administration, persons who rallied on behalf of this government. And so when you hear that and you recognize that, you know that things are not going well. Something is definitely wrong and we need to fix it. And the People's Action Movement is going to fill in the gap wherever we can. We are not going to sit aside and let the rights of our people be trampled on. Yes, there's going to come a time that we're going to have to join together to save our nation regardless of your political affiliation. But the People's Action Movement believes that the people must always be at the forefront. They must always be in the mind of our politician when decisions are being made. Because remember, these are the people that helped to give you a job. And when you get that job, you must do it and do it to the best of your ability. And so whatever the People's Action Movement have to do, we will do it because this nation deserves better. And under my leadership, we will definitely ensure that the people will always be put first.
Well, thank you. Thank you. There you had it. That was the leader of the People's Action Movement, Mrs. Natasha Gray Brooks. Thank you for making the time this morning
You're welcome.
to join us. And yes, we will definitely not make it such a long time.
All right. Thank you. And have a good weekend, everyone.
All right. Thanks. Well, there you had it. That was Inside the News for today. Our time shift we moved from 11 to 10 o'clock in the mornings, 10 to 12. So it's good to be back in your company. Until next time, do enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. Headline News is next.
Found the sound. 98.9. Win FM.
We now bring you the headline news. The headline news is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, The Grange, National Bank, and Caribbean Brewery.
Why wait for Santa when there's National? This Christmas, St. Kitts Davis and Gwilla National Bank